Hello and welcome to the podcast. I am your host, Donna. Join me as we deep dive into real and raw conversations about love, life, money and business.
Hello, Donna. Thank you for joining me today.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. I'm so excited to have you here. And for those that are listening, Donna Brodbeck, her name is actually my coach. She's been my coach for quite a while now. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to ask her back on because she was my first ever interview on my old podcast. And she's the first returning guest, which is pretty exciting. So I'm quite happy to have you here today, Donna.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. And how crazy is that? That we had done that. Well, it would have been about maybe 14 months ago now, I'd say, that we did that interview.
Yeah, it was. In a totally different context too, like all about narcissism, toxicity, relationships. And now we're talking about business.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's so different.
Which is super cool. So what I would like you to do is kind of tell us a bit about your background and your history with business. Just kind of like what got you into business? Like what was your reasons for wanting to start one?
So the funny thing is I run a coaching business. For those of you who don't know, I help business coaches who want to create a business for themselves, build an online presence, build their, online voice and their online brand. I also work with leaders who are wanting a seat at the leadership table. So I do kind of a mixture of, how to set yourself up online and have that online presence, but also a lot of personal coaching as well. And how that came about, it was very, very interesting. So I remember kind of being in this space. I was in my corporate job and I was in this space where I just gotten really, really comfortable. And I was like, this is not what I want to be doing anymore. It's not really fulfilling me anymore. And I was at that level of my career as well, where I was doing paralegal work at the time. And either the next step was to become a lawyer or to do something else. And I was like, I definitely don't want to be a lawyer. And because of that, I was like, okay, well, what else can I do? And so I kind of went through Seek and I was like looking at all of the different options that I could be doing. And the one thing that kind of stood out to me was HR, because I wanted to work with people. I didn't want to be behind a computer anymore. And so what I did is I started, going for HR jobs and that sort of thing. And I'd get up to like the, third round interviews, but I'd never get the job. And I was like, what is going on? And so then I was flicking through Facebook one day and I had an ad come up for my coaching school. I was like, oh yeah, I'll go check this thing out. I've always liked motivational speakers. Maybe I could be one of those. And that was back in 2014. And what had happened is I went for this information night, went and checked it out. And then I was like, okay, this sounds cool. I reckon I could be a life coach. They're selling you the dream about how you can have your 6-figure business and you can do all these wonderful things and have all this freedom. And here I was sitting in this classroom full of people. And I'm watching these people up the front who are coming and telling us about their story and how they did it and what they did. And, whilst you're in a room like that, you're so full of energy and, spark and, I can do that too. Yes, this is so exciting. And then you have to actually go and put it all into action. And so this was the thing that really stuffed me up when I walked out of that room is I had all of this excitement, all of this, I'm going to start a business. I went and told all of my friends what I was going to do. And then I was like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I started doing, my practice calls with people. There was 1 million modules that I could have watched, within the coaching school. They had this big library that was confusing as all hell. And there was so many things to watch. And I was like, how am I meant to work, do my practice coaching sessions, build this business, catch up on all of these classes that they have for me and all of this sort of jazz. And I really felt this sense of I don't know how on earth to do this. And so I was trying to do all of them and I was doing them all really badly. I'd find that I might be able to pick up a client here and there very sporadically, but I didn't know what to charge. And, I didn't even know if I was helping people make the change. And I remember somebody actually made a referral to me. And I felt like at that point in time, this person had paid me $1,000, which for me back then was huge. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, I don't even know what on earth I'm talking to this person about. I'd sit there and I'd watch all of these YouTube videos and watch my school modules whilst I was at work so that I actually had something to teach this person or to show this person because I had no idea what to do with them. And so that went on for about a year. I'm just kind of dabbling into everything. feeling like I was a massive fraud, showing up, to everybody else's classes and comparing myself to them, thinking I can never actually do this. All of that sort of thing was happening. And then it got to 2015 and I had some of my own personal issues kind of come up that I had to deal with. And so at that point in time, I was like, you know what, I'm going to take some time off of coaching. I'm just going to step away from it completely. And, then I'm going to reevaluate when things calm down a little bit. Mm-hmm. And so here I was thinking maybe 2016 will be my year. So I settled down, found myself this little 1-bedroom apartment and thought this is going to be it. And about 2 weeks into moving into that apartment, I had a blind in my lounge room fall on my head, which then caused me a whole heap of issues. I had a minor stroke, all of this sort of thing. So I was in and out of hospital. And I spent pretty much the rest of 2016 recovering and trying to get myself back to some sort of normalcy, which was kind of a blessing in disguise, because what had happened is it got me to reevaluate my whole entire life and go, you know what is it that you actually want? Do you want to be in this job? What is it that you're actually going to talk to people about if you do this coaching business? And it also was a really big time of healing for me because I was just kind of realizing that I was in a toxic narcissistic relationship. So it was a space where I was researching, everything I could possibly research about narcissistic relationships. And at that point in time, because it was a new discovery, because it made me feel like a normal human being, it felt like something that I really wanted to talk to people about. I wanted to share this message. Nobody's talking about narcissistic relationships. That's what I wanted, people to know about, so that people who were like me weren't feeling alone, weren't feeling like they were some crazy person. Mm. And so because of that, I then started studying that. And in the start of 2017, life started to get back to normal. My health wasn't 100%, but it was better. Mm-hmm. And I decided that I was going to start sharing this with people. And I put out one post. And in that one post, I had somebody contact me and go, oh my goodness, I really resonated with that. How do I work with you? I didn't even have a bank account or anything set up at that point in time. I was like, oh, okay, better go get some things sorted. And so I went down to CBA and I set up myself a business account and made sure I had all the things going, quickly set myself up some templates, some contracts and invoice templates and that sort of thing. And, off I went. I had my first client. And I was like, this is cool. Okay, let's see if I can repeat this. And so I kept on putting posts out there. And because I liked this thing so much, because I was so into this topic and because I'd studied it whilst I was, getting better and I had a lot of time to kind of do that, what I found is that, I knew how to solve this problem for people because I'd left my relationship. I knew what they were going through, so I could empathize with them. And I knew kind of what they needed to know in order to leave that relationship. So, I felt like I had, kind of mastered what they needed. So back then I was a narcissistic abuse coach. Mm-hmm. And within 3 weeks, I'd attracted clients from overseas. And, I already had like 4 clients up my sleeve within 3 weeks of that. Mm. So if you have something that you feel so passionate about, because I would feel annoyed when people would use the term narcissism incorrectly, And so because of that, I had this real innate, I have to go rectify this and I have to show people, what this actually means and how this can affect them and how to get out of this. I had this real desire at that point in time to make things right, make it known. So yeah, I think it was partly, niching down was definitely something that helped me because that very first year, 2014, like I was speaking about before, I didn't have a niche. I was just kind of doing a bit of everything, mm-hmm. anything that would land my way, I'd do it. So having a niche is definitely one thing that helped, and a directed message, but also feeling so incredibly passionate about that thing. Mm. Yeah. So I did that until mid 2018. So I did that for a year and a half. And then I found myself all of a sudden completely losing interest. And I was like, oh, okay. Now what do I do with myself? It's not that I don't enjoy coaching. I love coaching, but the space of narcissistic relationships started to feel quite heavy because in that space, not everybody is willing to take accountability for the fact that they have a part in it. So not everyone's going to like what I'm saying here, but I truly believe when I was in my narcissistic relationship that my part in it was that I chose to stay on some level. And yes, at that point in time, I didn't realize I was being manipulated, but also, you know, I chose to keep going back despite having the feeling that something was wrong. And so that was the same for a lot of the clients that I was dealing with as well. And after a while, I was like, I don't really want to do this. This feels really heavy. I feel really drained. You know, kudos to those who can do it. You know, Melanie Tonya Evans, who does do this work, kudos to her for being in it for as long as what she has, because for me, I was just feeling really worn down and I just couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah, I got to that point too, as you know.
Yeah. And so at that point, I was working part-time at that point, so I'd cut down my days at work. And I was like, well, what can I do? Because I do want to do coaching. And I think that's a really good point to kind of really understand, is if you do ever notice this within yourself, that it's not necessarily that you don't like the thing itself. So it wasn't that I didn't like coaching, but it's that I didn't like the niche that I put myself in.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of thought to myself, I'm like, well, what can I do? And I was like, well, I've built an online business internationally and I've done that quite successfully. So that's something I can definitely teach. I've got myself to a particular income level so I can get people to that space as well. And then, you know, from there, once I grow, I can keep on taking that to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is I just built up this wonderful community of women. They were all engaging in all my stuff. That's what everyone knew me for. That's what people would refer me clients for. And so I was like, oh, I feel kind of guilty leaving, because if I leave, then what are people going to think of me? You know, I've just abandoned all of these people who have taken the time to follow me. Like, what sort of person does that? And so I didn't pivot. I just stayed there for like a month or two because I felt so guilty about pivoting and going and doing something that I knew was going to light me up.
Yeah.
And that caused me a whole lot of pain because I just sat there and I wasn't doing anything. Like, I wasn't wanting to show up for my current niche, but I wasn't wanting to move to my next niche either. So I was in this really awful in-between place for like 2 months. And it was like, honestly, one of the biggest shifts in business that I'd ever had to have made, because it just felt so awful. It really, really did. And then I kind of got to a space where I was like, you know what, Donna, like, if you think about it, at the moment, you're not doing anyone a favor, because you're not speaking to your new niche. You're not speaking to your old niche. You're not speaking to anyone. If you keep going like this, your clients' contracts are going to finish and you're not going to have any business. So what are you going to do? You need to pull your finger out and you need to choose something. And at that point, that's when I was like, okay, cool, let's move.
Yeah. And
so that kind of brought me to the end of 2018. So I had pivoted at that point in time. I wasn't really sure how it was going to work. And the interesting thing is I told a few friends about it. And my first referral that I got was from a friend. And yeah, then things kind of started from there very, very quickly. And it was interesting because the moment that I decided to get rid of all of the crap that was going on in my head and just step into that and go, you know what you're talking about. You know that you're passionate about this. Just allow yourself to go and do it and stop holding yourself back. My business completely blew up. I had so many people coming through and I was happy. I knew exactly what to do. I knew exactly where to take it. I knew what their problems were. I could empathize with all of the things that were happening with them because I had been there myself. I remember those feelings of feeling like a fraud. I remember not knowing what sorts of content to put out there or how to have a sales conversation or, what to do when a client had a certain mindset issue or how to have that transformation. All of those problems I knew how to fix and how to solve. And so I knew that this was something that I could do. And when everybody started coming to me, I was like, it's one of those moments when things kind of work really seamlessly for you. And you're like, okay, yeah, I must have made the right decision because everything's just falling into place.
Yeah, it's like a full circle moment.
That. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Which you've had as well recently.
Yeah, it's a very bizarre, beautiful situation to have on your hands.
And yeah, so basically from there, things just grew. And then the interesting thing was then I started attracting clients who, because I wasn't a side hustler anymore, I was full-time in my business. I was, traveling around with my partner and all the rest of it. I started attracting people who were then, full-time in their business. So then I'd help them. And, sometimes I'd even attract people who, interestingly enough, I used to watch their stuff whilst I was sitting at my day job. I'd always have my earphones in whilst I was typing away doing my work, and I'd be listening to something personal development wise. And, some of those people would then come knocking on my door for coaching, and I'm like,
oh,
what?
wow.
I used to watch you. I used to kind of sit there listening to your stuff going, I want to be like you. And now you're coming to me. Like, it's just this real, and you really doubt yourself in that moment. You're like, can I actually help this person? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, totally. Isn't it funny how, just to touch on that, it's like, okay, I've got a question for you related to that. Was it strange for you so for everyone that's listening, we've both been through different life coaching certification programs, right? So I remember when I was sitting in my life coaching college class, learning from all these trainers, thinking, oh my God, they're so knowledgeable. Will I ever get to their level one day? Like, all these sort of things would swirl around in my mind. And then, like, as you grow and you become more successful and you start seeing results, you kind of have to acknowledge how far you've come. And then you look back and you go, wow, I've actually transcended, not all of them, but some of what the trainers, like what level they were at. Do you know what I mean? Did you find that too, Donna? And did you find that really kind of strange?
Yeah. So actually, this is a really funny thing that happened. So before we decided to go traveling and moving overseas and that sort of thing, my school had actually come and asked me if I could be one of those people for a couple of different sessions to go and speak to them and speak to all of their new students. And how I was telling you at the start, being that person in the classroom, sitting up there watching these people who were talking about earning six figures or multiple six figures or seven figures even, and kind of sitting there going, oh, will that be me kind of thing. I was being invited to now be that person for somebody else. And when that happened, it was nerve-wracking, exciting. It was all of the feels. Like, I just could not believe that I was being asked to come and, give a presentation to 70 odd people in a room, like, who were me once upon a time, not that long ago. It just felt so out of this world for me. It truly did.
Yeah, it's epic, really, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And it is for those moments that you were talking about where, as you say, you kind of have to reflect back and go, wow, this is how far I've come. It's just mind-blowing. And what's even more interesting is that in our industry, not everyone will make it. So out of a class of, 50 people that I had in my intake weekend, there's only me and my friend Emily are the only two people that I know of, at least, who have actually made their business quite successful. And the reason for that is not because we had any sort of special information that was given to us that was outside of what everyone else was given, but it was that insatiable relentlessness of like, I'm going to keep going. I was trying at this thing from 2014 to 2017 with not making much traction, having shiny thing syndrome along the way, joined an MLM, a travel MLM, tried to hustle all of my friends and family on board who were, then starting to block me because they were like, oh, bugger off, Donna, with your business stuff.
Yeah.
And then starting to feel like, oh no, the MLM didn't work. The coaching business hasn't worked. Nobody believes me that this is ever going to work for me. So I'm not an overnight success. I just want to make that clear. And for those of you who are not also an overnight success, stick with it. The relentlessness does eventually pay off. And I share that very purposely because I know that, my partner, for example, he was one of those six-figure people within a year. That was not me.
Wow. That's very quick.
But yeah, so seeing how far we'd come, seeing that, Emily and I were the, kind of the only two who had actually made it through, and then being invited to go and, speak in these sorts of rooms was just beyond phenomenal. And it was one of those moments where you just kind of realize, yeah, I did come this far, and not many people do make it, and you do have to be really, really relentless to be able to make it through. And you have to just make that commitment to yourself that, yes, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it no matter what, which actually kind of brings me to my decision about building my business in 2017. So when I did decide to jump in and do the coaching around narcissistic relationships at that point in time, I remember thinking to myself, Donna, this is the last time that you're going to give this a go. You've tried MLMs, you've tried other, coaching businesses and this and that and the other. if this doesn't work, give up. You know, you've done this for how many years it was, 3-4 years, you know, and it was kind of my last try. That being said, I also said to myself in that moment that I wasn't going to take on any pro bono. So if this was going to be my last go, I was never, ever going to take on a pro bono again. Like, it was just going to be pay clients and that's it. And it was interesting because the moment that I made this like definite decision of it's now or never, and no stuffing about, no pro bono clients, simply just pay clients, was the moment that I only attracted paid clients, which is, you know, why when you and I started working together, one of the things I said to you in the beginning was no more pro bono. We don't do pro bono. If you're working with me, that's it. Shut the pro bonos out the door.
Yeah. Pro bono just means you're scared to charge, doesn't it? It just means you don't trust yourself enough to charge people for your service.
Yeah, that's it. And like, there's a kind of a line in the sand moment. By you choosing that I'm never going to have pro bono clients again, it's choosing that I'm ready to up level, and this is just how my life is going to be now. And, you know, as you said, it's very much like I don't trust myself to be able to, you know, make the change for these people, so I can't possibly charge. And when are you ever going to be ready to charge, you know, for the service that you're giving? What point in time that you've, you know, hit the mark and you're definitely ready to charge? You don't. You just have to kind of give it a go and hope for the best.
Jump.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. You're not going to know until you give it a go. It's kind of like throwing spaghetti at a wall, seeing what sticks and giving it another go. That's part of that relentlessness that I was talking about before.
So true. And like, when you declare it to whatever it is you believe in, the world, the universe, God, anyone or everything, it's like once you've kind of declared it, it's like there's no going back. And you finally take yourself serious enough to go, I'm all in. I'm 100% all in, jumping with both feet in the deep end, going to make it work. I'm either going to sink or I'm going to swim. Like, that's kind of the decision that you make, hey?
Yeah, definitely. And this is actually really interesting what you've just mentioned, because when I started this in 2014, I went and told everybody that this is what I plan to do. You know, I'm going to start a business. It's going to be so good. La, la, la. And it was so external to me. It was so much about everybody else's external validation. I didn't start this. I didn't even know why I wanted to start a business at that point in time. It was just like, I want to start a business. That's it. You know, there was no real purpose or meaning or whatever behind it. Whereas when I made that final decision in 2017, I didn't tell anyone about it. It wasn't, you know, I didn't go around to all my friends and going, this is it. I'm going to give it my last shot. It was, I want out of my job. I genuinely don't want this anymore. I genuinely believe I can help these people. I've been there. I feel passionate about this. And it was a very different feel. And I just knew that I wanted that freedom for myself as well, personally. And through helping other people to have their freedom has allowed me to have the same freedom myself, where I don't have to be chained to a job I don't like, where I do get to have wonderful, loving relationships and friendships and that sort of thing. So it's this beautiful, beautiful gift that in giving and showing people how to have their freedom, it's just given me so much more freedom myself.
I love that. And I would love you to share a bit about what your life looks like in terms of freedom. So if everyone that's listening, when I signed up with Donna, she was just heading over to Bali with her, not fiance at the time, but boyfriend at the time, now fiance, who is also a 6-figure coach. And now obviously you guys had to run off to New Zealand because of the whole coronavirus stuff. But in terms of freedom, can you kind of paint a picture as to what your life looked like compared to when you lived, you know, as a single in your little unit, as opposed to what kind of happened for you once you moved overseas? Like, what did your day-to-day look like? What kind of freedom did you have?
Yeah, cool. So that's kind of a journey in itself. So when I was living, you know, kind of on my own in my little unit, before I met Caleb, I just started my business before I met him as well. So it was literally, I'd go to work and then I'd come home and everything would be just coaching. I loved it. I wanted to share everything. And then the interesting part is like when I met him, I actually found my business declined a little bit because I was in this total love bubble with him. And so I was not focused on my business at all in that moment because I was just so excited, you know, that I'd met such a really cool, decent guy, right? But then after a while, found my flow and, you know, we kind of had to put rules in place. So I'd say to him, look, from when I get home, so I was very prepared when I worked and when I when I had my business. So I had to have like all of my meals and everything all prepared on a Sunday, so that during the week, all I'd do is like come home, heat my meals, eat them, clean up, and then spend a couple of hours working. Like I was super, super strict in terms of my routine and that sort of thing, because I had to be. I only had a couple of hours a day that I could focus on my business and make this thing, happen for me. And so what I'd do is I'd say to him, I can't catch up with you until 9 o'clock at night. Or like when he started living with me, I said to him, from kind of 6 till 9, those are my 3 hours that I spend on my business. And then we can do whatever after that. And so that's kind of how our routine was up until I went part-time. And then when I went part-time, it was a little bit more flexible again because I had a little bit more time. But even then, like as you've known through your own kind of part-time and juggling work and business kind of thing, those part-time days fill up pretty quickly. You go, oh yeah, I get an extra day or 2 days or whatever it is. And then all of a sudden those days are really full and you just feel like you kind of were when you were working full-time.
Yes. Isn't that funny? I never thought that would happen, but you're so right. Yeah. 100%.
It's crazy. It fills up so quickly. And not because you're being lazy or anything like that, but because it genuinely just fills up with podcast interviews or coaching sessions or creating content or whatever it might be, marketing things. It just fills up. Mm-hmm. And so, then it kind of got to a point as well where I was like, if I don't leave my job, I'm going to start capping myself. I'm really going to start kind of having myself in a space of only being able to take on so many clients, because if I keep doing this, I only have so much time in the day. So I was like, again, I had to have that moment of like, draw the line in the sand. I need to take this leap now. Otherwise, this is never really going to be a business, not like I want it to be. And so, then I took the leap. We also decided at the same time to pack up our house, move over to, I'm not going to say Bali exactly, because we didn't exactly spend all of, that year in Bali. We spent it kind of everywhere. But we decided, Bali would be our first destination. So packed up everything. And then when we got there, I was like, I don't really know how to structure my days. Like, what do I do with myself now? So then I had a chat with my coach and she's like, what is your usual routine when you're at work? And I was like, I usually get up, I, walk to work most days. Or if I'm not walking to work, I might be catching the tram and releasing content and checking messages and that sort of thing. And then when I get to work, I'll have a coffee, make my breakfast, go back to my desk and start working. And she's like, cool. So that's what you do with your business as well. Keep the same routines that you already have in place for your business too. And I was like, okay, cool. So I started doing that and it worked really, really well. And then I just kind of had to like write a list at the start of each day, what is it that I know I need to cover off today? And, just aim to cover those things off. Not make it a list that's going to be so big that I can't manage everything, but just give yourself a couple of things a day that you can do outside of coaching sessions that are going to, move that little kind of needle forward, so that you're attracting new people into your business, so that you're expanding, so that you're scaling. What are the small things that I could be doing? And so that's pretty much how I kind of focus my days. And what that meant for us was just outside of business for a minute is we had some we've just had some really wild times. And I was saying this to Caleb the other day, because we're kind of now, with the coronavirus stuff and all the rest of it, we're in the space of lockdown and we're in New Zealand, which is his family home. And I said to him, I'm like, it's possible we might not be able to travel anymore, because the plan was to travel this year and then, go back to Melbourne next year and start settling down a little bit. And we might have to actually end that early, we've decided, because it's not very safe to do that. And I said to him, how cool is it that we had the last year to just go and travel and go and see all of these different parts of the world? Like we went to Bali, Thailand, Singapore, Kuala Lumpur, Hawaii, the Philippines. Who can say that they've lived on a beautiful island like that? We've gone and stayed in some of the best 5-star hotels in the world, eaten at some of the best restaurants, and found some of these beautiful hidden gems. And this is the sort of freedom that our life and our business has given us, having that relentlessness, taking these risks and not knowing how they're going to work out, pushing through and doing things like a Facebook Live. Guys, I can't even tell you the first time I had to do a Facebook Live, Caleb and I were living together at the time, and I said to him, you need to leave the house. You cannot be here. You're not allowed to be on social media. You're not allowed to watch it. And then he left the house, and I went into the shower, cried because I didn't want to do it that badly. I was like a child. I cried. And then I went back into the lounge room and I was like, okay, he's going to be home in like half an hour. So I have to do it before then. So then I, get on the live and I do like all of this kerfuffle for like a 5-minute live. I'm not even joking.
Wow.
It was insane how scared I was. Yeah. But I pushed through that. And then I went, okay, my world didn't burst into flames. And so because my world didn't burst into flames, I was like, all right, then let's try another time. And so each time it got easier and easier. And now I love jumping on an interview. I love being on a Facebook Live. Like, it lights me up. If you can't hear it in my voice, that lights me up.
It totally does. And can I just say, you now do it with Caleb in the room.
Yeah, I do.
Easily.
We do them together as well.
You do them together. You do them, in front of him together. So it's kind of like, who you used to be, where you're like, I can't even imagine jumping online and having a cry about it and then forcing yourself to jump on and pushing Caleb out of the house. It's like, now it's just a normal way of life because you kept showing up and doing the thing, yeah?
That's it. And, somebody said something to me when it came to doing the Facebook Live, and they said, if you can't even jump on a Facebook Live, then what makes you think that you're worthy of being a coach for other people, having the following, and being able to have the freedom to go do things like travel the world and, do all those fun things I just mentioned?
Exactly.
And I was like, oh, you're right. I can't do all of those things without pushing through the small things.
So true. And not just that, I don't know about you, but for me, I find jumping on a Facebook Live way easier than talking to a room full of people. That's just me.
I love both, personally.
Oh, I like both, but I find Facebook Lives less confronting, funnily enough, even though it can reach more people. I just kind of think, I don't know, I find that a lot less scary than jumping into a room of like a couple of hundred people talking. So I think Facebook Lives is a good place to start as well, to build up your public speaking skills. Don't you think, Donna?
Definitely. And if you're not comfortable doing it necessarily on your personal page, then maybe start off in your group, because that's where I did a lot of mine to begin with. I do it in my group just to, it's a safe space. If these people had jumped into my group, I already knew that they somewhat loved me. So I was like, great, I know that they're a safe audience to do this to. And I know that if I bugger it up, they're going to forgive me for it. Whereas I didn't want people, who, my aunties or people I went to school with or whatever, to see me stumble on a Facebook Live. So it felt safer initially to do it in the group. And then over some time, once I started to feel confident about doing that, my coach and my partner, Caleb, had picked me up on it and said, you only do your Facebook Lives in your group. What's going on? So then over time, I started being more comfortable putting it out on my personal page as well. And then, I don't know, just one day it wasn't an issue anymore. It's like anything. The more and more you keep doing it, riding a bike, driving a car, whatever it is, after a while, it just becomes second nature.
100%. So true.
Yeah.
So with the freedom, with your online business and with Caleb's online business, you guys built it up so it gave you more of a life of freedom, yeah?
Yes. There's two reasons. So I think business kind of has to have two different kind of aspects to it. One of them will be for yourself and one of them will be, for others. So for me, my overall message, my overall reason for wanting to be in business has always been, no matter what niche I've been in, the overall message has always been to help women to have a voice. So when I first started coaching, I was working in the space of narcissistic relationships, which was helping women to have a voice within their relationships. Now it's more about helping women to have a voice, within their business or within leadership tables. So the overall message has always been, for me, help women to have a voice. And I think part of that is because I spent such a long time feeling like I didn't have one myself, feeling like that was always shut down or it wasn't safe or whatever it might be. I'm not going to be heard anyway, or who wants to listen to me? All of those sorts of things would pop up. And so because of that, I wanted to give that gift to so many women who I know need that. I know that that's such a thing out there in the market. So it was partly that. And then I think, like I said before, the flow and effect of giving freedom, giving a voice to other people, is that I then get my freedom as well. I get to have this beautiful life with my fiance, and by giving to others, we're automatically taken care of.
Yes, I love that. It's such a double-ended reason, which I think is important. Like, it's important to have both, isn't it? Like, so you can have a bit of balance, like helping others and also helping yourself at the same time. And that gives you more purpose, I think, too. On those days that you want to give more, you can give more. And then by people investing in you as their coach, it's like you get to do more of what you need to and want to do for others and for yourself as well.
Yeah, totally agree. And, there's no better feeling than having a client message you and say, oh my God, I did this thing, like the first big package that they've sold, or, when they've left their job and they're no longer, stuck to a soul-sucking job anymore, or, the first client that they've landed, or, their first client breakthrough that they've had with their clients, or the moment that something that they've never thought about, you can just see or you can hear the penny drops for them. That feeling is just absolute, like I can't even put it into words for you, honestly. Like, it is just the most amazing feeling. And if there was ever a job to do, I'm so grateful that this is the job that I get to do every day.
Yeah, it's so true. So looking at your journey, what kind of qualities do you think is necessary to have that successful business, whatever that looks like to that person, whether it be six figures, whether it be helping women have a voice, whether it be them finding their own voice, whether it be, whatever their reasons are. What qualities do you think an individual woman needs to have in order to get to that next level?
So one of the things, whether you're selling a idea, so what I mean by an idea is whether you're a thought leader and you're trying to sell an idea so that you can create, change and impact, whether you're trying to sell a product, which is, again, going to create change and impact, or whether you're selling a service, which will create change and impact. Whichever one of those three things that you are selling, there's a couple of things that I think really, really prominent and that I've noticed in the most successful people. One of those things is, as I said before, that relentlessness. That's huge. You have to be willing to just keep going at it, and it's like have you ever watched those movies where it's those true story movies, and the one thing that you kind of notice about them is that they get knocked down, they get back up again. They just keep going. So that's probably number one.
Love it.
Number two is personal responsibility. So personal responsibility is a huge one. There are times where I've had to admit where I've made the wrong decision in business, or I've been wrong, or I maybe haven't done something right. I'm not going to claim to say that I do things right all the time, because I certainly don't. I've made mistakes. I've had moments of, wow, this is really good. And then I've had moments of, oh my God, what did I get myself into? You're going to have both of those. It's like a roller coaster. It truly is. And so personal responsibility has been a really, really big one. I have to own where, for example, one of the things that I'd done actually earlier on in my journey is I'd self-sabotaged an opportunity. So I self-sabotaged an opportunity to have a coaching session with somebody who was potentially going to pay me. I didn't write down the right time in my diary, and so I missed that session. And at that point in time, I wasn't really this lady was waiting around for me, and I wasn't really in a space of really taking responsibility for myself. I was just like, oh yeah, I missed it. Sorry about that. Really wasn't that kind of serious about it. And she came back to me and she put me in my box. And I appreciate her for that. I still remember her for that thing. You don't remember what somebody says, but you remember how they made you feel. In that moment, she made me feel like absolute crap, which was great, because I was like, Donna, is this who you really want to be known as? Or do you want to be known as the person who's reliable? And I was like, yeah, I don't want to be that person. A real business owner wouldn't do this. And so I had to take personal responsibility for the fact that I had created that, and I had a very similar situation happen where, and this will happen at any point in your journey, by the way. I don't want you to think that this only happens in the beginning of your journey. This happens you could be, a couple of years into business and you self-sabotage something, or you make a mistake on something, or you should have seen something that you didn't, or whatever. I actually had this happen at the end of last year. I got offered a really big opportunity to potentially go and speak at a very big speaking event. and it was the most amount of people I've ever spoken to. So far, the biggest room I've ever spoken to is 150 people. It was a much bigger room than that. You know, it was like probably double and some. And I was like, oh, this feels like a little bit too good to be true kind of thing. And so I was meant to send an email off with some information and conveniently didn't make the date. And my partner's like, oh, whatever happened with that speaking gig? And I was like, oh, yeah, I didn't make the cutoff for the email. And I knew on some level that I'd self-sabotaged that one. I knew on some level that that one felt too good to be true. And at the time, the excuse I gave to myself was like, you know, oh, I just haven't had time. You know, I've got so many things going on at the moment. And the reality of it is I really could have made time for that. There was no reason why I couldn't have woken up half an hour earlier to fill out this thing and send off the information that I needed to, but I didn't. And so I'm sharing this with you guys because I don't care what stage of business you're at. Nobody's perfect. And there's going to be moments where you fall down a little bit or you self-sabotage. And part of that is taking personal responsibility for yourself and going, you know what, I own that. I did that. I could have done better in that moment, and then learning from it. Not just like I own that I did that, but actually going, I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to work through whatever that was that stopped me from going through that opportunity. And, you know, next time that pops up, it's going to be very different.
Love that story. So do you think it takes more personal responsibility to be a business owner or an employer as opposed to an employee?
I would say that's kind of a tough question because I don't want to, you know, downplay the role of an employee, because I think employees are vital to a business. Like, you need employees to make things work, right?
Yeah.
So I think they definitely have their part. As a leader or as an employer, there definitely is a lot of responsibility that falls on you. You know, you're the person where the buck stops. So one of the things that I've been speaking to a lot of my clients about recently actually is, you know, my clients have been starting to take on their own team members. And one of the things that can happen when you start to take on team members is, you know, how you've been doing things. And so you get quite frustrated when they don't do it how you thought that they would do it, or they don't do it in the time that you thought, or, you have to spend all this time training them. And it's like, oh, I hired you so I could hand this off and not have to do it myself. Like, really, do I have to? And there's that like frustration that pops up. And I get it because I've been there. I did exactly the same thing. Your clients are a reflection of you. So it doesn't surprise me. My clients have also then had to go through that same sort of thing, right? And so our job as a leader, whether that be a business owner or a leader in the corporate space, wherever that might be, is to create other leaders. So rather than sitting there and getting frustrated with them, is to actually go, you know what, I'm going to spend a bit of time with you and I'm going to really nurture this to help create a leader in you so that my business is taken care of. And so that for that person, you know, whether they're working with just you or whether they're working for other people as well, they have those leadership skills to then go take initiative to do the things that you've now taught them to do. And so I think that that's really, really important in terms of being a leader and having that self-responsibility, is to recognize that you need to show up in a certain way.
Yeah. I think for me, like, there's definitely a huge responsibility being an employee. Like, we all have responsibilities, you know, the responsibility to show up on time, the responsibility to get our work done, responsibility that we're held to for performance reviews at work, keeping our skills current, you know, locking up or whatever it is. Like, we all have responsibilities as an employee, but something that's been really interesting for me being an employer or being a business owner, running your own business and being a one-woman show and then expanding, it's like, that level of responsibility is so much more than I could ever have imagined. And even like showing up to your sessions on time, like those little things are so important in terms of, like, I had a client the other day that I've already told Donna this story, but this is more for the listeners. I had a client the other day that was like, Olivia, you are always on time. Like, as soon as our appointment's at 10:30, boom, I'm getting that call. It's never a minute before. It's never a minute after. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's a professional brand. Like, if I let that stuff slip, how can I expect you to rock up on time? Like, you have to be a leader in so many different ways when you own a business, and the responsibility is, it's different. Like, I can't really explain it. It's so much more than what I ever thought, but it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing.
Yeah. Your point just there as well. It's about building trust with people. So by you rocking up on time every single time, it builds that trust with those people that Olivia's reliable. She cares about me enough, because that's what people want to know. Do I like you? Do you know what you are doing and what you're talking about? And do you care about me? And, yes, she likes you because she wouldn't have signed with you. Yes, you know what you're talking about because you've taught her things already. And yes, she can trust you. You care about her because you're showing up on time to these sessions.
So what's your advice on self-sabotage? So if you've got someone that's in business, let's just paint a picture. So imagine you've got someone who's like, they might have just started their business or they've had it going on for a little while, but they're in that directionless sort of place where they're like, they don't have any guide or that one-to-one support. They're kind of fluffing about, trying to find their way, trying to figure it out basically, but their own stuff keeps bubbling up to the surface and they keep self-sabotaging, like missing, not getting that product to that customer on the day that they said they would, or whatever it is, like missing deadlines or not showing up in the capacity that they should be. What do you say to them?
Oh, first of all, if you don't have a coach, get one. That's an absolute. But if you are doing something like that, there's some reason why you're not doing it. So there's some sort of secondary gain that you get out of staying in the same spot. And maybe it's that you get to keep safe and that you don't actually have to then up level to that person. Or maybe there's a little bit of belief stuff there, so you don't believe that you can do it, or, you might become too successful if you do that thing. And that's some of the stuff that I had to recognize, that story that I shared with you before around the speaking gig. I had to go, whoa, you know a lot better than this, Donna. Like, you run a very successful business internationally. There's no reason why you should be doing this sort of thing. What's going on? And when I checked in with myself, I was like, well, that would just take me to a whole new level, wouldn't it? And shit, heaven forbid, or I don't know if I can swear, sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
Heaven forbid that we actually have you being at that next level of success. That would be a lot, wouldn't it? And so I went, okay, cool. Like, that's the barrier. In that moment, that was the barrier. And so then it was about actually having to work through that limiting belief, and having to work through the comfortable space that I was in that moment. Because the spaces where I've actually had those moments of like feeling so scared and so like, I don't know if I can do this, let me give it a go anyway, have been the best moments in my life. Whether it be in my personal life, my business, they have been the absolute best moments in my life. And I had to remember that. I had to go, remember when you did this, remember when you did that, because as human beings, we're quite past assurance based. So when we're looking to see if something's going to work for us in the future, we'll go back to a past event to see how that worked. And so I actually had to start looking for evidence in my past on, what is it that worked then? And if I was to apply that same thing, how would that then work now for this current situation that I'm in?
I love that. I love it. And what's your thoughts on, so I know for me, rewinding a fair bit, when people look at someone that's got a level of success, this is probably me when I first started life coaching. I was like, cool, I want to start a business. I know this is what I want. You're looking to these people that are 6-figure coaches, or they're in their bikini drinking, like coconut water or something under a tropical palm tree saying, 10 grand just fell into their lap and all this sort of stuff. So I know for me, when I was watching that sort of stuff, I was looking at them and going, oh, they're just lucky. Things were just easier for them. It just worked out. So what's your thoughts around luck? Because I know that there's probably going to be some people that listen to this and go, well, that's all nice and well that Donna's reached 6 figures and blah, 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 because sometimes there can be a bit of like a disconnect from where that person might be as opposed to where they want to be. And when they hear other people getting there or having that thing, they palm it off as lucky. So what's your opinion and your beliefs around luck?
Yeah, so my opinion around luck is that it's a load of BS.
I thought you'd say that.
And here's why I say that, right? Like, yes, right now I look lucky, but boy, can I tell you, back in 2016, my life was so different, guys. Like, if you haven't been in a narcissistic relationship, you may not be able to relate as well. But if you have, you're going to relate really, really bloody well to what I'm going to say. Being in that relationship was hard work. For 10 years, I spent with this person being manipulated that, maybe I wasn't right. Maybe I was wrong all the time. Or he would lie about things. And then maybe I'd have to kind of be like, am I going crazy? Like, because he'd be like, oh, you're over the top. You're taking things too seriously. So I was always questioning myself in this relationship. I'd express something that I needed, and then he'd be like, oh, you're being too much for me, and so I was always questioning myself. So I had that going on. I was in a job where what had happened is I had started doing this business stuff. And the moment that my work actually started to pick up on the fact that I had something else going on outside of the workplace, there was me and another girl that were kind of on that same level. And I'd been doing paralegal work for quite a while without the actual title itself. And they had a paralegal role come up and they gave it to her, which fair enough. She was studying to be a lawyer anyway, so that's fine. But I was really pissed at the time because I'd already been doing this work for them for so long, and they gave her the official title, promotion, and pay that went with it. I was so mad about that. And then on top of that, I'd had this, thing that happened where the blind had fallen on my head, when I moved into that new apartment. And so when that happened, I was told I had kind of one of three things, either a brain bleed, a brain tumor, or a brain disease. They didn't know what it was. They didn't know what the mass was. And so it wasn't until after vigorous testing that I'd actually had, we'd come to the conclusion that I'd had a minor stroke. And so all of that stuff was happening. Then I had like months of like recovery, or like 2 years worth of recovery after that, where I'd get constant headaches. I'd feel like I was going to pass out at the drop of a hat. Because it was a neurological issue, I couldn't eat properly. So sometimes I'd feel like if I was going to, eat something, I'd feel like I was going to choke. I had all of that going on whilst I was in hospital. Friends who I thought were going to come visit me never came to visit me. Just like, I don't know where on earth they were. There were only a couple of people in that moment, and they were not even people that I thought I could rely on that came to actually be there for me. So all of these things are happening all at once. And yet I still kind of sat back, and I remember there was a moment in the hospital bed, and I was like, please God, please do not let me have a brain tumor. Please don't let me die. Because I was only like, I think I was like 26 or 27. I think it was 26, I'm pretty sure. I was like, I'm only 26 years old. I haven't had somebody, I haven't had real love yet. I haven't had a baby yet. I haven't, traveled, the way that I want to travel yet. Please don't let me die. If you don't let me die, I promise you that I will make this better. I really do. And then they came in and, 2 weeks later told me that I'd had a minor stroke, and, things, it's actually making me emotional. Yeah. So trying, saying to me that it was a minor stroke and, that things are going to be okay. It was just going to take me a while to recover. And so I made that choice in that moment that things were going to be different. And I started to, walk away from that relationship. It took me a couple of months to do that, but eventually I completely gave that relationship away. I started to go, okay, well, work is clearly going to start giving promotions to this other person, not you, so you now need to take control of this business, and you need to not just have kind of sporadic income, but consistent income, and build it to a full-time income, so everything kind of changed in that moment. It was not luck. It was pure moment of realization. So there are three things that will kind of, help to wake a person up, like really awaken a person. And one of those things is mortality. One of them is birth of a child. And one of them is an influential person. So for me in that moment, it was mortality. I had a moment where I had a chat with God, and I basically said, and I don't know if it's God or universe or whatever you believe in, but I basically said, please, if you give me this chance, I promise I'll make it better. I won't waste this life again. I promise you. And I think, having a moment like that changes you forever. You never forget a moment like that, because you're in so much pain. There's so much anguish that you're willing to really step in and start taking the actions and start seeing things for what they are. So yes, I get to be one of those people who's on the multiple six-figure income, and that I get to sit underneath palm trees and drink a cocktail and whatever else. I guarantee you it's not always that glamorous. It really isn't. I think people have this perception of what it is. It's not always that glamorous, trust me. But, occasionally we do. And that's not pure luck. That was waking up, having radical honesty with myself about where things were at, and then actually making choices that were very, very different to the ones that I was making in that moment.
That's so true, isn't it? It's really leaning in, really getting honest, really leaning in, not just kind of wiping your hands and going, you know what, this is just too hard, or that's fake and it's not real, or that person's just lucky. Like there's all these limiting beliefs that go around in the general public, I think, that can actually really hold people back. And it's not even our own thoughts half the time. Usually they're other people's thoughts that we've taken on to believe is true because we don't think it's possible for us, or we're not willing to go the distance. Yeah.
That's it, guys. I can tell you, and I'm very, very transparent about what I've experienced in my life. I've experienced sickness. I've experienced, like toxic relationships. I've experienced every form of, abuse that you could possibly think of. Like I've experienced the whole kit and caboodle. And this is one of the things that I think a lot of people do is they make all of those past experiences make them a victim. I can't do it because I used to be, in a shitty relationship. I can't do it because, when I was younger, I had this abuse happen to me. I can't do it because I don't have enough money. Guys, I was living off like bloody $20 a week at the time when I decided to start my business. Don't tell me you don't have money, because neither did I.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you could use all the excuses under the sun, but at the end of the day, you need to kind of just get honest with yourself about whether you really, really want this, or whether you're just so addicted to the space that you're in right now that you'd rather stay there and have that shitty lifestyle than actually go, you know what, I deserve better. I'm going to go for better. My life does not have to be like this, and I choose differently for myself.
Yes, I love it. And the reasons, like, as you said, all those things that have happened to you, instead of it being a reason why you can't do it and falling into victim mentality and staying there and being self-pity party or hating on others for having what they have, like, I reckon that should be a reason why you can be successful in business. That should be a driving force, I think, not a reason to run away from the option of having a successful business.
Oh, yes. Yes. Oh, I'm loving this. This is so much gold. The reason why I love that you said that is because Caleb and I have had this conversation time and time again, right? Where this might sound really sadistic, but there's some part of me that really loves that I've had so many, what would be perceivedly bad things happen in my life. Because first of all, if those things didn't happen, it wouldn't have gotten me to where I am today. But secondly, give me a reason why you can't go do something. Because between my partner and I, we've got you covered, like
you'll
I've
obliterate
shared with you a little bit about, I shared with you a little bit about, what I've done. Caleb has got the other things that I haven't done covered. He recovered from cancer. He was in $180,000 worth of debt when we first met. And that's completely cut right down. We've already wiped off like a good over $100,000 of that.
Really?
So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So you come at me and tell me why you can't do this thing, because I don't want to hear it. Between the two of us, we've got you covered. We've covered all of those bases. There's no reason why you cannot do this. And the only thing that is stopping you is you. It really, really is.
And I think too, like, Caleb's pretty open about mental health history for him as well. So like, that's another thing. Like,
depression.
Like, that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be something for you not to do the thing. I feel like, and this might be controversial to say, and I don't mean it to offend anybody, but sometimes I feel like we grab onto things that have happened to us, or we feel like it's happened to us. We don't believe that it's happened for us until we change that mindset. I feel like it's very easy in our culture to go, well, this happened to me, and so therefore I can't do XYZ, or I've got this problem, so I can't be successful in business, or, all that sort of stuff. Do you know what I mean? And it's just fucking bullshit. And people play into it. People around us play into it. So it kind of consolidates that limiting belief, and it feeds that negative mindset that keeps you capped, that keeps you stuck, that keeps you trapped, that people feed into that excuse. And the beautiful thing about having a coach is I don't let you have the excuses. Yeah, like, that's such a like, I've thrown some of those your way. I try not to. At the end of the day, you do know better. It's just, it's easy to fall into the trap of, I'm tired, I've got no energy, or whatever it is, that's not an excuse. You're going to have energy again. It's not a limited resource and you run out and you never have it again. You just learn to manage it and learn how to get more of it and utilize it and all that sort of stuff, you know?
Yeah, and actually that kind of takes me, you said before, what are the qualities that you think that a person needs in order to run a business? And I kind of mentioned that relentlessness, and I mentioned before, what was the second one? Do you remember? I can't even remember.
Personal responsibility. Whoop, whoop.
Personal responsibility. And the third one, I'd have to say, would be behavioral flexibility is a really, really big one. And the reason why I say that is kind of like what you were just saying then. You know, there's going to be moments where you are tired. There's going to be moments where you don't feel like it. There is going to be moments where you've got your own stuff happening in your own life and you don't feel like you can be that pillar for other people. I get it. I know, I've been there. I actually remember, I have this really funny story. When I was working, I used to, you know, I'd have some clients that were over in the US or wherever, and the only time that would really work for them is 6 o'clock in the morning, my time. So I do sessions before I went to work. And I remember one time I had a session, and because we lived in this studio apartment, I'd go across the road, you know, to the coffee shop and do my session in the morning from there because I didn't want to wake Caleb up. And so this one morning I went over to the coffee shop, and on my way, I don't know, somebody must have just had like a big night out the night before, but they'd spewed all over the ground. And so as I was walking to the coffee shop, I didn't see it because who's looking out the spew on the ground, right? Especially at 6 o'clock in the morning. And I slipped over in this other person's spew. Ew. And I was like, yeah, so it was disgusting. It was like, and I was like sitting there like gagging myself. And I was like, what do I do? You know, because I've got this session that was literally in 3 minutes. So it was like 5:57. I remember the time even. It was so clear in my mind. It's 5:57. I've got 3 minutes to go to the coffee shop and set myself up. Or I can go back, get my pants changed, and then go to the coffee shop. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to be late for this client. So I went and I sat in the cafe and I waited for this client. 20 minutes later, the client still hadn't showed up. She'd forgotten about our session that day. And so here I was sitting in somebody else's pew for 23 minutes, you know, like completely grossed out. I stank. And I was just sitting there because I was that committed to my business. I was willing to have the flexibility for myself around being like, you know what, this is something that really grosses me out, but I'm going to stick through it anyway. It's not about me in this moment, you know, and that's not something once upon a time that I would have ever done. Once upon a time, I didn't care enough to be able to go and do those things. But when you become a business owner, there are times where you really have to be that pillar of strength for your clients and lead the way so that they know as well. Another example of that has been more recently with all this coronavirus stuff going on. I'm not going to lie and say that it hasn't upheavaled my entire life, because it has. We've just spent the last year, or just over a year, you know, traveling around the world, having a fantastic time. And we thought that we had another year of doing that. We thought this year was, you know, our last year of doing that. We've recently kind of come to the conclusion that it may not be safe for us to travel anymore, and that we may have to go home a little bit earlier than what we expected. And we had to cancel our wedding and all of these things that happened. It's, you know, been a bit of a communication breakdown between us. Like, it's not been easy. Mm. But that being said, it's not been easy for my clients either. And so my clients have been coming to me going, hey, Donna, can I really be making sales in this time? I don't know if I can do this. How am I meant to manage my job? Or I'm scared I'm going to lose my job. Or all of a sudden my job is expecting more of me. How do I manage my business, my clients, and all of a sudden needing to show up in this time? So there's been a lot of behavioral flexibility that I've had to have around sorting out my own nest and sorting out my own crap very, very quickly and not letting it drag out, but actually having some tough conversations with Caleb about where we're going to live, cancelling the wedding, and how we communicate to each other through these moments of like having to make swift decisions, so that then that energy that I was spending in my own nest could then be focused on my clients who need me to be the pillar for them. And that's the behavioral flexibility you need to have. You're always going to have your own stuff going on. But when you're a business owner, you don't get to kind of, same as you're kind of, if you're an employee, you go to work, you get to go to work, you come home, and you just focus on what's at home. It's not the same for a business owner. You're always on. There's always something going on, and you have to be the pillar for other people. And so that really requires you to kind of pull your stuff together and be a bit more flexible and change things when you need to, pivot if you need to, start making if you're an essential service and you need to be at work right now, maybe you need to start making programs so that people can still, be part of the work that you're doing without you having to be as present there. Maybe you need to rely on your VA a little bit more, give your VA a little bit more content, creation or releasing or whatever it is, so that you can spend more time just doing the basics so that you can get through what's happening at the moment. You have to kind of be creative so that you can show up as your best self in these moments.
Yes. So two of those things that you've just told me stick out. So the first one is having the tenacity. So like the behavioral flexibility, being tenacious in these times. And this is just like a magnifier. Like this whole coronavirus thing is it's basically just showing that we have to be behaviorally flexible on a huge level. But even before this and once again after it, it's just going to be lessons, but it's going to be the same lessons, but on a different scale. So behavioral flexibility is so important. And the other thing too is the commitment. Like I love that story of you sitting in the vomit in the spew, waiting for your call. I love that. And like that's the thing too. The commitment is so important. Like even when you feel like you don't know enough, or you don't know enough models, or you don't have enough experience, or you don't have enough clients, or enough money, or enough resources, or whatever, it's the commitment, isn't it? Like that's the one thing that's really stood out for me. And if I can actually just share a little story around commitment as well, like this, I think this would be I find it quite funny actually. So when I was doing my postgraduate training in midwifery quite a few years ago now, I remember I was sitting in a class and one of the teachers was talking about commitment. So commitment to finishing the degree, because it was a really tough degree. Like it wasn't just you go to uni, you learn what you need to learn and you go home. It was like you worked full time, you studied full time, and you were on call full time for 20 pregnant women, right? So I hardly slept. Like at the time I had a partner, I hardly saw him. I ate takeaway all the time. I took like micro sleeps at the hospital. I think I was there like 20 hours a day, not every day, but it was like the hardest thing I'd ever done in my life. And this teacher was standing at the front of the room and he was talking about this level of commitment from a student. And he was telling us this is the sort of commitment we have to have for the next 18 months. And he was saying that this student, who was like 6 months into her course or whatever, was leaving her house and she was going to be riding a bike to the hospital. And unfortunately, she got hit by a car and she had a few broken ribs and I think she broke her leg and ankle or something like that. Anyway, so on the bike, she had this backpack, all her workbooks, all her notes, all her papers and stuff around the degree and the people, like the pregnant women she was following and all this sort of stuff in her backpack. And when she got hit, the backpack like flew open, all the papers and textbooks flew all over the road. And because there was cars coming from the opposite direction, they actually ran over her textbooks and it was muddy and all this sort of stuff. She ended up having some internal bleeding and the ambos are like, we have to get you to the hospital right now, you need surgery. And she would not let them leave until the ambulance people actually went and picked up every single piece of paper and textbook. She did not let them drive off with her until they had every item of hers packed up in the ambulance with her. And I sat there and part of me was like, girl, that's so ridiculous. Like you can just go back and buy those textbooks and so what, you've got to rewrite a few assignments, no biggie. But when I actually thought about what life coaching meant to me, so like I became a midwife in a different mindset and energy and time in my life. And as much as I love aspects to MIDI, I actually thought about if it was me in the ambulance and it was my life coaching books. And that's when I really realized, wow, I am actually super committed to life coaching in my own business, because the way that she felt about her textbooks around MIDI was like how I feel about my notes from coaching, and even like notes I've taken with you, Donna, through our sessions and all the stuff that I've learned. Like I'm not saying you have to have that level of commitment, but it has to be pretty close. Like you have to be super committed no matter what happens externally or even internally. You're going to do it no matter what until you become successful, until you get that desired outcome, until you get that thing that you want. Like never giving the fuck up. Yeah?
Yeah, I could not agree more. That is exactly what it takes. That absolute just dying commitment for it. And that's when you know you found the right thing as well, because it's not because somebody has forced you into it, you have to show up today or anything like that. It's that genuine, you want to be there. And, you know, even in moments where sometimes I feel a little bit like maybe I've got a headache that day or something like that and I'm feeling a bit tired or something like that. And I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to jump onto this session today. I'm feeling a little bit tired. We all have those days. And then I'm like, you're going to feel way better after you've jumped on this session, Donna. And then I'll jump on the session and it sparks me up that much. I love what I do that much that I'll get off the phone in a better mood than what I was before I jumped on the phone. And that's not like all the time, obviously, but there are moments where I am feeling low energy, that the thing that I do, I love it so much that it sparks that light in me and ignites that fire, that energy within me. It's why I don't mind getting up really early, or like when we had to rush back to New Zealand. New Zealand's about 5 hours different to Bali. So I hadn't had a chance to like update my calendar or anything like that. So I had somebody who had booked in for like what would have been earlier in the day in Bali, but was 8:30 at night in New Zealand. And so here I was, jet lagged, my time zones completely all over the shop, and I had this session at 8:30, and I was like, oh, 8:30, that feels really late. Like I'm much more of a get things done kind of early type person. And I was like, that's all right, the person's already booked in, I don't want to stuff them around, I'll just show up. And I kind of just knew that even if it was 8:30 at night, I was still going to find that energy from somewhere. And you know what? I did. And it was a great coaching session. And there were all of these, wonderful realizations and that sort of thing. And I got off the phone and didn't even realize that it was 9:30 at night. I was like, oh, okay, great. That's awesome. And it's that level of commitment, that level of this thing really lights you up that you just don't notice it.
I can relate to that. In fact, when I did my online program last year, it was the first time that I did night sessions. So I'd jump on at like 7:30. I might feel tired because I've had a big day and I've cooked dinner and I've rushed off to do the course. And I'm like, oh, I don't feel like showing up tonight because I'm so tired, or I didn't get much sleep or whatever. And then I'd be in it doing the thing. And afterwards I was like so high on energy, I could have gone for a run, like, because it just absolutely lights you up. And I was like, wow, I've got to watch this, because if I do this at night, I'm never going to get any sleep.
Yes, I'm the same. I get that too. I'm like, oh, I get so wide and so excited, but then I have to actually take some time to settle down after that.
Yeah, I'm 100% like that too. So before we wrap things up, I've got a few little spin-off questions, if that's cool with you.
Yeah, sure.
So what's the wildest thing you've done in business?
I'd have to say the wildest thing to date has been, like, as in risk-taking, do you mean?
However you want to interpret the question.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to interpret it as risk-taking, and I'd have to say the wildest thing that I've ever done is to leave my job. That felt the biggest thing that I've ever done, just because you don't know what you're walking into. And it was funny because I remember people telling me that you're going to wish that you left earlier. And I was like, yeah, well, that's all good and well for you to say, because you're already there and, you're a success and blah, 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 blah. And then I did it. And now I'm like, I get it. Like, I feel like I should have done this earlier. I was so well and truly ready.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's definitely it in the short answer. Yes.
Beautiful. Love it. What is the best piece of advice you've ever received that you've applied to your business and your life in general? Well, it doesn't have to be just one area. Often you get a piece of advice and it can apply across multiple.
I would have to say the biggest thing is to lean in. And that sounds so basic and so simple, but it's the first thing that kind of comes to my mind as you ask me that question. And the reason for that is because in business, it is constantly leaning in. It's leaning into the scary moments. It's leaning in when you don't understand something. It's leaning in to learn something more. It's leaning in to understand your clients better. It's leaning in to understand yourself better. It's constantly just leaning in. And the more that you're willing to do that, the more that you're going to get out of your business. And the same thing applies to your personal life as well. The more that you're willing to lean into those relationships or into that friendship, your friend's trying to tell you something and you lean into what they're saying and you're hearing what they're saying as opposed to making it about you and going, oh yeah, I know, I've had that to me, happened to me as well, whatever. If you can lean in, you're going to have such a deep friendship with that person, or you're going to have such a deep relationship with your partner. You're going to have such a blossoming business. So the biggest piece of advice I can give you is to really just lean in.
Ooh, I like that, because running away and distracting yourself or not getting back to that thing, that's like the easy option. Like, it's so easy just to go, you know what, I don't want to go down that road. I'm going to head off the other direction. But yeah, leaning in is...
Well, it's actually not the easy option though. That's the funny thing, because even if you avoid it, that thing is still going to come haunt you in a different way. You know, it's still going to come find you.
Yeah.
So you're just basically taking the long way to the road that you're always going to end up down anyway. So you may as well just lean in and face it. But I have seen people, distract or avoid, and then they kind of go, you know, they come back to that moment. They're like, oh, okay, I had to deal with that anyway. It's kind of like, if you think about it, it's that, you know, that relationship you don't want to leave because you're too scared. And so you keep on avoiding that, but then eventually you know that you have to do it. Or the business that you have to start and then you get made redundant in your job. So then you have no choice but to start it. Like, the more you avoid something, the more that it becomes prominent.
Yeah, that's so true. Oh my God, yes. It's just delaying the inevitable. And last question, who were the top 3 people that inspired you to believe that having the business that you wanted was possible, that having the lifestyle that you wanted was possible, that having what you have now was basically possible and available to you? Like, what mentors or people did you look up to for inspiration that kind of played a hand in your own journey?
Yeah. Okay, cool. So there's a couple of different people, and they're not going to be exactly what you expect. So ironically enough, the very first person who ever inspired me to start a business was actually my ex-narcissist. So despite that relationship not being one that was very healthy for me, he was an entrepreneur. He had the lifestyle of being able to kind of get up whenever he wanted to, go travel overseas whenever he wanted to, all of that sort of jazz. And I'd never really known any entrepreneurs in my life before. So when I saw that he was living this life, I was like, wow, that's amazing. It was so far out of anything that I knew prior to meeting him. And so he started to open up my world to the possibility of that being something that was, you know, available to me if I wanted it. And so if I could actually take away all of the hurt and those things, that aspect of it was amazing. And I will be forever grateful and forever thankful for that.
That's so similar to me. Isn't that weird? That's so weird.
Yeah. It's funny, the people who come in and give you those gifts, they're not always the people that you think.
No.
So he was the first one.
Mm-hmm.
If I was to think about somebody who inspires me who I don't know, but who I very much look up to, I would love to be obviously my own unique Donna version of Lesa Nichols. I love what she's about. I make a joke about it and I'm like, I want to be the white Lesa Nichols. I think she's amazing. You know, she very much talks about having a voice. I related to her and her story a lot because a lot of the things that had happened to her had happened to me, in terms of, like, she had a boss that once told her, are you sure that you're meant to be in accounting? I remember having a boss once tell me, are you sure you're meant to be in law? Like, this doesn't really feel like it's a fit for you. And at the time I was pig-headed and I was like, no, it is meant for me. But in actual fact, I look back now and I'm like, you're right, it was not meant for me. So yeah, she would be the second one. And the third person, it's not really one person, to be honest with you. So I'd have to say it's all of my mentors, you know, so either mentors that I've personally coached one-to-one with, or mentors through my school. They have been probably my third influences, because they're the people who, first of all, kind of introduced me to the coaching world, nurtured me into, you know, what I needed to know to do that, and then taught me how to run a business, what to look out for, you know, helped me to heal a lot of my self stuff so that I could be there for other people. So I can't actually put that down to one person, because each one of them taught me something different, and I'm eternally grateful to every single one of them.
Aw, I like those options. They're all really great.
Yeah, thank you.
They're brilliant. So
if great questions, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So if people want to follow you and find you online, where can they find you?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different places in which you can find me. I mostly at the moment am hanging out on Facebook. So, I mean, you can either look up my personal profile, which is Donna Brodbeck, or you can look up my group, which is Amplify-her for business owners and leaders. Or you can find me on Instagram. Again, look up Donna Brodbeck. You can find me there. So I'm pretty much on most socials, but I'd say I'm probably most active on Facebook.
Beautiful. Love it. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for taking the time to come and sit and talk with us today. Like, this interview was only supposed to be 60 minutes, and honestly, we probably could have talked for double. Like, we've been at it for like an hour and a half, and honestly, I could do like that times 3. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule and out of your day, and talking to my lady friends that are listening to this.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for having me. And I agree, I could speak forever, but I actually have another interview to run off to in like 4 minutes. So
okay, we'll wrap it up.
This is really good timing.
Awesome. All right. See you in the next episode, guys.
All right. Bye for now.